Fowler's toads live on the beach, staying safely buried under the sand all day, and then coming out after the beachgoers have gone home and rehydrating and eating insects by the water's edge. Their tadpoles eat algae. Their life cycle requires soft, sandy beaches and clean water, so when we protect Fowler's toad, we're protecting ecosystems that are precious to people as well. Fowler's toads are endangered in Canada, remaining in only 3 regions, all of them along Lake Erie's northern shore. These are in Rondeau and Long Point, which are parks, and Niagara, in which humans and toads live side by side. Each of these regions contains a population of toads made up of several subpopulations that are close enough together that should numbers fall too low for any one of them, individuals from a neighboring subpopulation may wander in and mate with the survivors, rescuing that subpopulation. Rescues can't occur between the 3 populations, though, Rondeau, Long Point, and Niagara, because they're too far apart. Of concern to me is the Niagara region, which is currently under threat from high-rise development. The subpopulation at threat is at Crystal Beach, Fort Erie, Ontario, circled. The public beach at Crystal Beach is called Bay Beach and is the best one anywhere near Buffalo, so it attracts a lot of tourists. Bay Beach is on Abeno Bay, which has Point Abeno on its west end and the old Crystal Beach Pier on its east end. The federal government of Canada has designated Abeno Bay as critical habitat for the Fowler's toad. Here's a portion of their table. The critical habitat site east of Abeno Bay is the easternmost site. So if the Abeno Bay toads are destroyed, the site east of Abeno Bay will probably be extirpated as well, since there will be no toads able to rescue that site should a local weather event decimate the subpopulation, as happens frequently for those toads that live at the edge of Lake Erie. In the other direction, west of Abeno Bay, the surf is much rougher, so a major storm could wipe out that subpopulation too, should the Abeno Bay toads no longer be there to rescue them. Also, consider that if something at Bay Beach is killing toads, like heavy construction or major human development, then toads that wander into Bay Beach from the east or west will be killed too. These domino effects make it particularly important to assess the safety of any major development at Bay Beach before it's begun. The planned high-rise got approval even though the Ontario Recovery Strategy said that habitat mapping and modeling across the entire Canadian range of this species is currently lacking. Biological data is lacking for the Niagara and Rondeau populations. So to evaluate how much damage the proposed high-rise will do to the toads, we'll have to use educated guesses about where the Bay Beach toads might breed and hibernate. We know that in the spring, males make their way from their sandy hibernation area to their watery breeding area and start calling like this to attract females. The females join them and lay eggs, which form tadpoles, then metamorphose into toadlets and toads, which make their way to the beach. Lakes, shallows, ponds, streams, temporary pools, and wetlands all have been used by Fowler's toads for breeding in other geographical locations. So as for the location of Abeno Bay toads' possible breeding sites, we can suggest some possibilities. There are rocky lake shallows at Point Abeno, where calling has been reported. There's a pond with an outlet to Abeno Bay. There's a stream with an outlet to Abeno Bay. There are some rocky lake shallows called Poverty Bay, where calling has been reported. There are wetlands, and there are some rocky lake shallows east of the pier, where calling eggs and tadpoles have been reported. So there's a number of possible breeding sites to be investigated, and some photos of a few of these are shown on this next slide. Where, though, do the Abeno Bay toads hibernate? This is a problem for them. They need sand that is at least 2 meters above the water table level. And remember, the water table level is about at ground level when you're this close to the lake. They need that depth so that they can dig deep enough in the sand to avoid freezing, but still not drown during the winter. Here's an example of a perfect hibernation habitat that's found on the west side of Point Abeno. This is great habitat for daytime refuge during the summer as well. But this isn't on Abeno Bay, where pickings are a little slimmer. At Abeno Bay, shore wall protection may impede the toads from getting to the back beach areas. Let's scan Abeno Bay from the old Crystal Beach Pier on its east end going towards the west end. And notice the shore walls along all the cottages. The rundown building and red wall you're going to see in a minute are Bay Beach, the public beach. And then west of Bay Beach, again, you'll see a bunch of cottages which have continuous shore wall protection. The back beach areas of Bay Beach behind the old concession stand and the concrete block wall are about 2 meters, 6 feet higher in altitude than the fore beach. Toads can get to this back beach area by going up the ramp on the left of the old concession stand or around the hill on the right of the concrete block wall. Residents have reported seeing females with eggs here and burrowing spots behind the old concession stand. But this critical hibernation habitat is about to be replaced by a 12-story high-rise condominium retail restaurant meeting site complex. As you can see from the red outline here indicating the footprint of the condo complex, it takes a crucial chunk out of the critical habitat of the toads, which is outlined in green. Crucial not only because of its size, but because it's the only back beach habitat component where toads might be able to get to hibernate. Is this high-rise really essential? Well, let's take a look at Erie Road, the road that runs parallel to the beach right here. East of Erie Road, east of the Bay Beach, you can see here was some cottages lining the road, and west of Bay Beach, east of Bay Beach, you'll see some shops, some cottages, some restaurants, but the bottom line is that there's basically a glut of housing elsewhere in Fort Erie, which is primarily rural, and there's plenty of other places that new housing could be built if it were indeed needed. Crystal Beach residents had already made award-winning neighborhood plans for their beach, which envisioned the dilapidated buildings being torn down and the back beach area turned into parkland. They didn't think a 12-story high-rise blocking their homes and businesses from their primary asset, the beach, would benefit the community or tourism. They voted out the councilor who let their back beach lands be given to a private developer for a high-rise condo. But they were told that the developer would sue the new council if it backed out of the project. Taxpayer protests and lawsuits ensued, to no avail. The Fowler's toad came to represent the desires of those who wanted to preserve the beach in a less developed, more nature-friendly state. Here's some evidence of those struggles, and look at the bottom of this poster, this old poster, which asks, the Endangered Species Act, will it apply here in Crystal Beach, Ontario? What does the Endangered Species Act say? Well, it says that the Fowler's toad is protected by law. It is illegal to kill, harass, or transport the toads or to destroy their habitat, unless the project will actually provide a net benefit to the toads. The former Minister of Natural Resources accepted the developer's argument that this development will provide a net benefit to the toads. But will it? Look at the size of the underground garage that will be dug. It will take up, looking from west to east, you can see the dark lines that indicate the boundaries of this property. It will take up the majority of the back beach area. Look also at the 100-year flood line and look at the locations of the washrooms. They've been moved from the back beach area. Those will be destroyed into the flood zone and hazard zone, where the developer's own advisors have told him that it will sustain repeated damage. These washrooms are, remember in the scan we saw that red wall? That's where the washrooms are going to be, right near the water. And there's a gate indicated in the plans too that'll be closed when the washrooms flood. Around the underground garage, even more space will be taken up by revetments. Revetments are large rock piles that are required to stabilize a high-rise like this being built in unstable wet sand so close to the edge of Lake Erie, which at times can look like an ocean with fierce storms, waves, and flooding. Note the scale bar so you can see the size of these buried revetments. There will be some of the revetments will be buried, which are indicated by stippling. And there will also be exposed revetments, which you can see as the white areas north of the underground revetment. So those would be where the rocks come up above the surface. And we know Fowler's toads prefer sand to rocks, and so do beachgoers. How is it claimed that this project would actually benefit the toads? By creating artificial habitat. But that's strange because it's specifically stated by the Ontario Recovery Strategy that an assessment of the effectiveness of habitat creation projects is lacking. If we knew how to create new artificial habitat for these toads, they probably wouldn't be endangered. Until then, destroying their natural habitat seems irresponsible. The developer said he'll rope off a small portion of the remaining hibernation area so the toads won't get trampled by beachgoers, and he'll landscape that area. But in truth, this isn't a net benefit for the toads. The area he'll rope off is in an out-of-the-way place that wasn't being walked on even previously. And moreover, the researcher Dobbin has shown that normal beach use doesn't reduce toad population size, because remember, they're safely buried during the day while the beachgoers are there. And as you're walking down the beach, you're not squishing toads underneath your feet. This habitat is much smaller than the hibernation habitat they had. The plants can be problematic for the toads, but most of all, the roped off area is questionable in that it differs in many respects from the natural habitat that Fowler's toads would seek out for themselves if they were allowed to pick their own habitat. The artificial habitat will contain buried rocks, although from the surface it'll look to the toads like soft sand, like they like. There was an existing concrete block wall that raised the altitude of the sand behind it to make a perfect hibernation spot, as I've indicated with the pink heart. But the developer will remove that wall and level the sand so that that perfect hibernation area will be gone. The high water table level here fluctuates wildly, as I've indicated with the blue box, and so does the depth of the frost layer, as I've indicated by the yellow box. As the toad tries to dig farther back, seeking higher ground where he won't freeze and won't drown during hibernation, he'll only find shallower and shallower sand as he moves back, and he'll hit rocks as he tries to dig down and get deep enough. He won't have much energy because he's cold-blooded and it will be cold outside to keep trying to find deep, dry sand that he can dig down into. Even if he's able to get below the rocks to do that, he may have trouble emerging again in spring. Why are these rocks being put here? They're most likely revetments for the building. The only area that will be left that will be suitable for hibernation for the toads will be the area here marked X. Previously in this back beach area, there was nothing underground on the site, and the only above ground structures were the small ones that you can see in the yellow area. So the toads were free to choose from a huge back beach area wherever they wanted to hibernate. Remember now, as the toads try to move east seeking hibernation habitat, they're going to have to get around all of that building to find it. That might be a problem for them. Then in the spring, as they get out of this little cranny where their hibernation area is, if they've been able to find it, will they be able to find their way back to the pond in which they were tadpoles? They go back to the original pond in which they were tadpoles, and they use their sense of smell for that. But with all the hubbub of the buildings and the people and everything going on there, will they be able to? Remember, they don't have an aerial map. We don't know. What we do know is that this artificial habitat is too close to what will now be a greatly increased nighttime foot and vehicular traffic and lights, because this is going to be a nighttime hotspot now. Those lights are going to draw insects and toads into areas where they're vulnerable. This is also too close to the drainage of contaminated oily waters that are now going to be pumped out of the below water level underground garage. That drainage and the hardened surfaces that will be caused by paving won't be good for keeping the beach and Lake Erie clean for the toads or for the people who use Lake Erie's drinking water and fish and swim in it. And hardening beaches is never good for retaining their sand. Aside from these problems, won't the toads be destroyed by the minimum of 2 years of heavy construction at the site? The developer said he'll put up a fence to keep the toads out, and the workers will find them every night and move them. But the Fowler's toad recovery strategy said that information is needed to determine the feasibility of translocation projects. In other words, we don't know how to translocate Fowler's toads successfully. The toads will probably return to the site by morning, burrow under the fence, and be unseen by the workers, buried in the sand, dug up and killed, either squashed or sliced. Or if the developer says, well, all right, then I'll transport them too far away for them to come back. Well, it's got another set of problems. Even if the new area he finds for them is good habitat, well, then in that case, there will probably already be toads living there. And that will result in a competition for food and a probable death of some of the toads. Even if the toads do survive, those that survive may have a hard time finding their way back home now, back to their original breeding ground to reproduce, given the fact that they were picked up and moved to a new location, completely disorienting them. Now, this is a lot of problems. How can these problems be solved? Here's my solution. Why not build instead on the non-beach side of the road? Prohibiting high-density development on the beach side of the street would be the least that the new Minister of Natural Resources could do to protect the tiny critical hibernation habitat of these toads. Then the buildings and parking lots on the beach side of Erie Road could be removed, and the whole area on the beach could be allowed to naturalize, forming sand dunes and a large, high-quality beach that humans could enjoy by day while toads enjoy it by night. This would be win-win, and I sincerely hope this will be what happens. Thank you.